and thank you everybody for being here. I realize it's late. I will try to keep this succinct and I'll try to stay on point. My job is to investigate computer crime. Computer crimes can be as simple as someone stealing a computer. It could be a hacking into a bank, or it could be someone that is a predator and going after one of your children. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the cases I investigate have to do with, my wife tells me I have a big mouth, so I'm not used to having to need a microphone. The vast majority of the cases that I work have to do with child predators and what we commonly refer to as pedophiles. However, that's a loosely used term, but for the sake of our discussion, we'll stay with that. Is there anybody that does not have internet in their house? Used to be most of the people raised their hands. Over the years it has become one or two people. I'm not here tonight to ban the internet. Number one, I don't have that kind of power, and number two, I don't think that would work. I know that Lakewood got quite a bit of notoriety in the news because as a community, I guess, they decided that by banning the internet that it would solve this problem. I differ in my opinion, and I think that most people, at least in my line of work, and some Rabbanim around the world as well, disagree with that. And it's a real simple reason why I disagree with it, and that is, and we'll talk about that as I go along, if you don't have the internet at home, fine. I'm not here to tell you you got to go out and get the internet. However, if you have the internet and now you decide, wow, that Rosenthal guy got up there and spoke and scared me to death, I'm pulling the plug. By doing that, you're sending your kids underground. They're now going to go to a friend, to the internet cafe, to the public library. They're going to go somewhere where they can still get access. And even if they can't get to the library or they can't get to the internet cafe, almost everybody has one of these. And by the way, if you do have one, please set it to stun so that when it rings, it won't affect my train of thought. My little PDA has internet access. I even have, I didn't bring it with me, but I have a digital camera. I'm kind of cheap, so I don't buy the expensive one, but the higher version of the one that I have actually has the ability to take the picture and then send it via email to all your relatives. So it's kind of like the cell phone, except it doesn't use cell phone technology, it uses the internet. But this term that the technology world is using called convergence, they're bringing the world into a smaller and smaller and smaller ball. And access to information is available everywhere. It's not going to go away. So by getting rid of it, you're not going to solve the problem. You're possibly going to make it worse. That's, I guess, somewhat debatable. I must say, though, that I'm kind of very happy that I've gotten to speak after Rabbi Torsky here, because he's very on point with a lot of the things that he's saying in regard to what I'm talking about. I can get up and say my whole presentation in one sentence, although I like to be wordy, so I'll make it longer than that. Go home and be parents. The internet is not your babysitter. It's a very dangerous babysitter if you think it's going to be a babysitter. And it's only going to cause a problem if you use it that way. The internet is great for getting information. It's great for the availability of Torah. We get, I don't know, 3 or 4 different shiurim a week that we use at our Shabbos table for our kids. We've got Parsha questions. We've been through the whole Chumash, I get it from Or Sameach, I think, the Parsha questions that they email each week. We've been through the whole Chumash, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 times now, totally, because that's how many years we've been doing it. A friend of mine just told me that his Rav moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he still learns Daf Yomi with him. They've got webcams, and they go online every day and learn Daf Yomi together. And they see each other. They're 6,000 miles apart. So that's the internet. That's the great thing that the internet has to offer. But we always have that, good versus evil balance that we always have to worry about. In business, they call that cost-benefit ratio. So I guess we have to look at it that way. So, but where are the problems? And now we'll talk about some of the negative aspects. Your kids are chatting, not just verbally, but they're chatting, whether it's on the cell phone with the text messaging, or on the keyboard, or on the bus coming home. More than likely, they're on the bus coming home text messaging the kid in the row behind them. The interpersonal skills have kind of diminished with the access to all this technology. But they are doing all of this, and they're not necessarily doing it with their core friends. There's a very mistaken concept with kids, if they think of a concept, that, well, if it's my friend's friend, then they're okay. However, their friend's friend may not have been a friend at all. It may have been a stranger. If you go home and you look, does everybody know what a buddy list is? Anybody not know what a buddy list is? A buddy list is your kids go online to chat with their friends, with these instant messages back and forth. They can have a predefined list of their friends. And instead of having a whole name there, they get like a nickname, which is a screen name or a buddy. And it's a buddy name. If your kids have 375 buddies, there's a problem. I travel all over the world. I know people on 4 continents. I don't know 375 people, but my friend's 11-year-old has that many buddies. It's, 15, 20, 25 people, grandparents, siblings, best friends, camp friends. That's 25 or 30 people. If you've got more than that, you've got a problem. So the kids go online and they instant message each other. Now, if you use AOL or Yahoo or MSN or any of these various instant messaging programs, one of the things that you can do is you can set up what's called a profile. Now, here's the part in my presentation where I begin imploring upon all of you. You may decide after listening to me that I'm just full of garbage and I don't know what I'm talking about, and thank you very much for coming. But if you don't listen to anything else I say, please at least listen to this. When you go home tonight, or the next time you talk to your kids, ask them if they have a profile. What is a profile? A profile is a free-form electronic box that you can type in anything you want about yourself, or about anything for that matter. You can just type gibberish in there if you want to. Most of the kids put all sorts of personal information in this. Now, we're going to talk about MySpace and some other things in a few minutes, but right now we're talking about the instant messaging programs like AOL. It has suggested topics that you could type information about, your favorite subjects or your favorite colors or sports or hobbies or all those type of things, but you can put whatever you want in it. These kids all have profiles. Get rid of that profile. And now I'll go into why it's so important. It's life or death important. I sneak under here for a second. I always wondered what was behind these things. The Mets are playing tonight. The kids go on, they create this profile, and all their friends can look at this profile. Well, part of my job is to proactively go out and see if I could find predators. I can't send up a flare and expect predators to come after me. So what I did was I created a screen name, and in this particular case, I called myself Mary L. 14. I was Mary Ellen, I was 14 years old. That's another point to be made. The screen name should not be anything about who you are, and certainly not your age. If for nothing more, then in a couple of months it'll be your birthday and it won't be 14 anymore. So, but I was Mary L. 14, and I created this profile and said I had blonde hair and blue eyes, went to Catholic school. I don't know how I came up with that one. And that I was a cheerleader. I really don't know how I came up with that one. But I typed all this stuff in there, and then at the bottom of this little profile I put down, I can't wait to be on my own. So I decided to go fishing. I came in to work for a night shift in the evening and created this profile and went online at around 10 o'clock at night, somewhere around there. And I don't know if you've ever seen the way the instant messages work, but when you're logged on, I didn't go anywhere. Because of the issues of entrapment, I couldn't go to chat rooms and say, hey, you want to talk to me? I just logged on to AOL and just sat there at the home screen. Whenever you're online, if someone wants to instant message you, they send out the instant message, and it pops up on your screen in a little box. And I would get one or two or three here and there. Hi, do you want a cyber? Anybody not know what that means? When you say I want a cyber, it means I want to have a sexually explicit conversation with you online, one-on-one. So right away, if I got a message like that, I would check to see if this person had a profile, and I wanted to see who it was that was asking me this. Most of the time they maybe did, they maybe didn't. Couldn't really tell much about who they were. So I was kind of maybe getting a feel for the way that this was going to be working. Around midnight, the instant messages, it was like someone fired a starting gun. They started popping up on my, I'm sorry, the microphone. They started popping up on the screen so quickly that I couldn't answer the one that I just saw because the next one popped up in front of it already, to the point where it crashed my computer. Hundreds of these things were just zooming up on the screen. I rebooted the machine, I went back online, and I got an instant message that said, hi, mind chatting with an older guy. This was the first instant message from this person. Well, now, when I created Mary Ellen, I decided, geez, I'm kind of feeling somewhat omnipotent here. I can make Mary Ellen do whatever I want because she's a figment of my imagination. So I decided that she will not have the word no in her vocabulary. No matter what, it's always going to be yes. So when this person said, mind chatting with an older guy? I said, sure, why not? And we had a very nice conversation. What's your favorite subject in school? What kind of subjects do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Very parv conversation. A couple of minutes into it, do you mind if I send you my picture? And in parentheses put G-rated, of course. Sure. And this conversation went on for a while. But it was, again, very plain vanilla. The next night, struck up conversation again. Again, very nice, pleasant conversation. Not conversation like this, but I'm talking typing. Now, at the time, my daughter was 14. Same age as Mary Ellen. I don't think they're friends, though. And two different schools. Yeah. I had to learn from my daughter the shorthand that kids use to talk to each other, because it's a whole nother language. I think it'd be easier to learn Cyrillic because, and my daughter can type 5,000 words a minute. It's just unbelievable. I took typing in the 8th grade and killed my teacher. She dropped dead of a heart attack, but I think that was because we kept taking the screw out of the typewriter and the platen would... Anyway, so I learned this little shorthand. Speaking of which, does anybody know what POP stands for? Parent on Patrol. POS, that's not a point of sale terminal. That's a parent over shoulder. If you walk by your child and they turn off the screen real quick, you have a problem. It may be a small problem right now, but you have a problem. They're doing something that they don't want you to know about. Now, it could be they're just complaining because they just got in trouble and you screamed at them and they're venting to their friend. But either way, you've got a problem. And we're going to get into that a little bit. So I started this conversation over a couple of different nights. And then, all of a sudden, he asked me, "You're 15, right?" And I said, "I can't ask Mary Ellen how old she was. I don't remember what I said. I'm not really Mary Ellen." So I had to real quick go back and get my notes and the transcripts of our other previous chats and quickly read through them to remember what I had said. That's when I took a few minutes and I made a crib sheet and had it right there so I'd remember exactly, because this guy started to test me. He wanted to know whether or not he was in the midst of a sting, which he was. So this conversation continued on, and he kept drawing me in. Now, in the mental health care profession, what this is called grooming. He was grooming me. He's building my trust. He's making me feel that he cares about me and that he's going to protect me and that he is my savior. Now, of course, I had to make sure to try to outsmart him, which I luckily did, and we'll get to that. But as things progressed in our nightly conversations, it started to change after a couple of weeks. This case, by the way, took 3 months from beginning to end. Typically, they take a couple of months to work. But it started to change from school and friends and personalities and things like that. One of the things I told him, he asked me, "Well, how is it that you're able to stay online all the time like this?" "Well, my mother works the midnight shift at the hospital, and my father's a traveling salesman, so I've kind of got the house to myself, except for my bratty little sister that I have to take care of. She's only 10, and I put her to bed, so I've got the house to myself for the most part." God bought it. But the type of conversation started to shift after about a month to, "Do you have a boyfriend? Have you ever had a boyfriend? What kind of things have you guys done?" And of course, I'm not going to stand here on Kodesh and get graphic with you, but I don't need to. You can use your own imaginations. Just when you do use your imagination, put it on steroids and then multiply times 100, because that's where this went. To the point where, after about a month and a half or 2 months, he was trying to convince me how he can be the one to show me what all women like and make me a fulfilled woman and bring me into womanhood, so to speak. And in order to accomplish that, at the outset, he began to send me pictures. And then he began to send me stories to read. Then he began to send me videos. And, I've been doing this for quite a while, and every time I get one of these cases, I say, it's not going to affect me any more than it already has, because I've already seen it all. And every time I say that, I eat my words, because one of these maniacs takes it another level. I'm working on a case right now that is just, it's just horrific. I don't know, there's no other word for it. And again, all throughout this, I'm like, that's cool. I would try that, sure, yes. To the point where at one point, he said, "How would you like to think about coming and living with me in Florida?" Now again, he doesn't know this is me. As a matter of fact, in a way to keep this real, I took a picture of my 14-year-old daughter and I taped it to my monitor. And every night while I was working with this idiot, I would look at her picture and say, this just as easily could be her. You know, you say the plumber's house, all his toilets leak. And cobbler's kids all need shoes, that whole thing. So, but I'm fully cognizant and aware that even in my house, the cyber cop, this could still happen to my kids. And it could just as easily be happening to your kids. Don't, for 1 millisecond, got to use computer terms up here, don't for one thought think, oh, it's going to be someone else's kids, it can't be mine. We've got a good family. That happens to other people, it doesn't happen to us. It happens to us. I'm here to tell you that. I got war stories, we could be here all night. I can tell you lots of war stories about our community, not the outside community, not someone else. Very quickly, I was called to Seattle. One of the day school Rebbes was arrested for trafficking in child pornography. The community was in an uproar. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know if their children had been molested. I was asked to come out there to try to do an intervention and calm everybody down. Thank God we found out that he had not done anything with any of the children. However, he still was a child pornographer. We had a Rav in Muncie that was arrested not only for trying to entice what he thought was a 14-year-old boy to meet him. It happened to be one of our undercover officers. The night before we executed the search warrant, he got arrested with an actual 15-year-old boy down in the other end of the county. Had a young couple that were newly married, had a young baby. The woman would make dinner for her husband. He'd come home from work. He'd be tired. She'd want to talk. He was too tired to talk. He brought her a computer, taught her how to chat, came home. Her shaitel was on the table, and she was in an 18-wheeler on her way to Ohio with a truck driver that she started talking to. I got a call just recently from Los Angeles, family with no internet, no TV. Somehow their daughter got hold of a cell phone, and she's now having a romantic relationship, 8th grade, was it like 13 or 14, with the modern boy across the street. So these things are going on. Now, this guy wanted this Mary Ellen to give up her comfortable bedroom, even though her parents may be in some sort of turmoil in his mind, and run away and come live with him in Florida. I gave him his wish. I went down to Florida. And when I got there, I took my search warrant and I went to the Orange County Sheriff's Department and got these 2 really big other cops. And we went and we knocked on his door, and he answered the door in his t-shirt. And I should back up 1 second. My partner and I were working this case together, and every year he goes to a family reunion that they have down in the Jersey Shore. So we were going to have to put the case on a sort of a hiatus for a couple of weeks while they went on their vacation. So I wrote him and said, I'm not going to be able to talk to you because I'm going on vacation. I'm not going to have a computer. Oh, I'm going to miss you. This is so terrible. I've got to talk to you. You mean so much to me. I can't live without you. So, well, give me your address. I'll send you a postcard. That's the best I can offer. Okay. So while my partner, you know, we cops, we all have to always have a partner because it's no fun eating donuts alone, you know. It's not. He goes with his family, and he had these 2 twin nieces that were also about 14 years old. So he goes and buys a postcard down at, what is it, Ocean City or whatever it is, and has one of his teenagers write, you know, wish you were here, sure do miss you, love, Mary Ellen, and mailed it to him. Well, when we get there to his house and we knock on the door, and we go in and we execute the search warrant, and I go to his computer, which was online at the time, chatting with someone else. There on his little thumbtack board is a postcard from Mary Ellen. So there was no denying who he was. We seized all the equipment and everything, of course, and took it back. One of the things we found in his treasure trove was a floppy disk, and on that disk were over 250 names, email addresses. So we had to go and check each one of those for a very simple reason. I'll get to that. We gave this guy a free ride downtown, and he kept insisting to us all the way down in the car, you don't need to tell me my rights. I'm a lawyer. I know my rights. Okay. How about if we tell them to you anyway, because we love to say it. So we read him his rights, and he insisted on talking, so we insisted on listening. When I got in the interview room and I said to him, I said, how did you find Mary Ellen? He had no idea that it was me. To this day, I don't know if he knows. How'd you find Mary Ellen? Oh, that's simple. You go online, you go to find user online, you type in keywords. I put in blonde hair, blue eyes, 14, and it popped up and showed me that she was online at the time, so I started talking to her. And what does it search? It searches the profile. It's a keyword search. Well, I love to see these commercials that AOL has all the time. We care, we're listening, we've got spy software, and we've got anti-this, and hello, AOL? Yeah, hi. Could you get rid of the profile? Oh, no, it's an important, integral part of our program. What's the service to the community that this provides? Well, people can find each other. Oh, as in predators and young people? Well, if you look at it that way, they're not getting rid of it. So, this fine lawyer didn't put up with Abraham Lincoln's famous words that anyone who uses himself for a lawyer has a fool for a client. I always get the quote wrong, but he defended himself in federal court. By the way, I'll go back to the floppy disk. One of those names we found on the floppy disk, the email addresses, ended up being a 12-year-old girl from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, who he had struck up conversation with, and who had actually run away from home and gotten on a Trailways or Greyhound bus and was on her way to Florida to be with him. Her parents figured it out literally the last minute and chased the bus down on the highway and got her off this bus and literally saved her life. She testified in this trial against him. I'm happy to tell you that Charles Edward Stewart, it seems like these criminals always have three names. Like, it makes it sound more ominous. It's like, would it have sounded as bad if it was just Lee Oswald? It's got to be those three names, right? So Charles Edward Stewart, he was your guest for dinner, and he will be for the next 19 years because he's in the federal pen and you're paying for him. But thank God he's off the street. So that's one really, very involved case. Since that time, I've had numerous other ones, and I can go on and on and on. Unfortunately, the sexual predator that we have to worry about for our kids today is your lawyer, he's your doctor, he's your rabbi, he's your priest, he's your garbage man, he's your mailman, or woman. There are a certain number of these predators who are women. I can't give you an exact percentage, but it's probably maybe 5 to 8% roughly. That's not scientific by any means, but it does happen. They typically go after young girls. But it used to be when we talked about the frum world, we always said, like with the divorce rate, oh, we're 20 years behind the rest of the world. Well, with this problem, we have come light speed into the rest of the world. We have the same problem. We're just a microcosm of the bigger population, and we have a massive problem. One thing you need to watch for is if your kids all of a sudden have something new, specifically a cell phone, and you don't know where it came from. These predators love to get the phone out there because then they can talk to the person. So if your kid shows up with a new iPod or a new cell phone or some new something, and you can't imagine where it came from, get involved, find out what's going on. Now, I just want to go back to Mr. Stewart here for a quick second. Imagine I really was Mary Ellen. It's kind of hard to imagine. I don't have blonde, I don't have any hair, much less blonde hair. But imagine that I was this girl and I was so stupid as to run away from home and go do this. What do you think is going to happen 10 days, 2 weeks, 5 days, whatever, after I get to Florida? I'm down in Orlando. He took me to Disney World. He took away my innocence. He's lived his fantasy that is just off the charts now. But now it's all over. He's done all that. Do you think he's going to walk up and say, Mary Ellen, we need to break up. I don't like you anymore. You got to go back to New York. There's a flaw in that logic. He can't do that because he knows that what he's done is sort of the ultimate felony. Because if he sends me back to mom and dad, he's going to jail. So in the real world, not this fake world that I created, but in the real world, the best we could expect out of this is that Mary Ellen ends up in a 50-gallon drum behind a Kmart or a Walmart maybe, or some other huge big place with an empty field behind it, never to be seen again, except maybe on the side of a milk carton if you've seen this child, or at night right before the news from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And mom and dad can't figure out what happened because she just poof, vanished. And what's typical of most families that lose a child, that room becomes somewhat of a shrine. They don't touch anything. The frilly bed covering, the school pictures on the shelf, the teddy bears over in the corner. And mom and dad stand there at the room, tears roll down their eyes, and they look at each other and say, what happened? Where'd she go? As they look around the room. But what they're missing when they're looking around that room is that computer that was sitting right there on the desk in that room. Get the computer out of your kid's room. It's the most dangerous place in the world for that computer. Get it in the kitchen. Get it somewhere where you can watch what they're doing. I'm willing to bet everything I have, not too much, I'm a cop. Well, my bills, I have lots of those. I'll bet that every one of your parents told you, don't talk to strangers. And I'll bet that every one of you told your kids the same thing. And if you didn't, see somebody professional quick. When my parents told me that, I'm a hillbilly from Tennessee originally, so we didn't have a ball field. We had like the woods. But in my mind, I see the guy in the raincoat hanging out at the park or something in a van handing candy out to kids. You know, that was the stranger that my parents instilled in my head that you don't talk to. Well, today, that stranger sits at home eating Twinkies, walks electronically right through your front door, right past your elaborate alarm system that you spend thousands of dollars to have installed. You know, the code is 6130, you know. Down the hall and into your daughter's bedroom or your son's bedroom and teaches them things sexual that you just cannot imagine. I don't care how worldly you are. I don't care how much you've seen. I don't care where you've been in life. It's unimaginable what these people will do and can do and are doing. That computer has no business being in your child's bedroom. Get it in the kitchen. Get it in the den. Get it somewhere where you can see what they're doing and watch what they're doing. Most parents today, as time goes by, it's changing because the kids now start with computers in kindergarten, so by the time they become parents, they won't have the same intimidation factor that many of you have about computers and technology. We're afraid of it. So we kind of let the tail wag the dog by letting the kids run the show. I ask a lot of times, how many of you have the master account password or screen name to AOL or MSN or whatever? Most of the time people don't even know what I'm talking about. Well, my kids take care of that. Well, you can't set the parental controls if your kid has that password. They can lock you out. I'm going to start to get ready for that, if you don't mind. I'm going to show a little video here for a second. It's about a 3-minute video. This is an actual 14-year-old, I believe she's 14-year-old girl, who actually ran away with somebody that she met, and it's her voice. Now, you won't see who she is. It's more cartoonish, kind of. You'll see it as it plays, but this is real. This is not an actress. This is the girl herself. And then after that, we'll continue. But I think it's important at this point to be able to see.
The internet, it's a tool that has to be used properly. You know, it's like a knife. I mean, it's very helpful, but it can also cut you. My name is Julie. When I was 13, I started talking to Tom. He didn't act or even sound like a 56-year-old man. So he was different on the computer. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be talking to him, but I did it out of a retaliation against my parents. It felt nice to have somebody who wasn't always trying to tell you what to do. It started to get more like a relationship where it went from just friends to best friends, a more personal relationship than best friends. I would instant message him between 3 and 6 hours a day. I was really upset whenever I couldn't get on the internet because I knew that he would be like, "What were you doing?" And he emailed me like 10 times to wondering where I was at. Then you feel like extremely bad about it. It was an opportunity for him to manipulate more. I trusted him more than anybody else. He mentioned, wouldn't it be nice if we were together all the time? And then the thought came up of running away. The night I left, I kissed all my brothers goodnight, and he was in his truck, and we just rode out. I ran away for 3 weeks. The day that I was found, we were on our way to Reno. Somebody reported us and saw our truck. I knew pretty much it's over. And I mean, I never really thought the day would come. He's going to be in jail for 25 years. He sent a letter to me saying that it was my fault and that he was going to kill me if he ever got out of jail. I was really upset because he didn't say anything about caring about me. I didn't think of his background, and I didn't apply it to myself, and so maybe he could have done anything to me, even killed me. And so, you know, now that I'm back, I feel like there's this huge emptiness inside of me. If I could have talked to people, maybe I would have had a different view on some things. If you're planning to run away, it doesn't help solve anything. If it does anything, it makes it worse. Little things can end up becoming a big thing. I kind of wish that I never would have run away in the first place. I would never do it again.
This little girl could very well have died at the hands of this 56-year-old guy. Now, this fellow that wanted Mary Ellen to come to Florida, he was a 53-year-old, now former lawyer. So, very similar story, actually. Not quite the notoriety of that one. That one made national news because they were spotted out in Reno, Nevada, and somebody called the police, and CNN picked it up, and it became a real big story. But I want to. I don't want to go too long here. She was chatting with this guy 4 and 5 and 6 hours at a time. Nobody needs to be using their computer that much. When I was a kid, I came home from school. I lived very close to school, so I walked. Not like my mother. She walked 5 miles to school barefoot uphill each way and in the snow in South Alabama. And I just had to walk up the hill home, and it was very close, a couple of blocks. But the first thing I did was through the door to the refrigerator to get a glass of milk and some of my mother's Toll House cookies. If you're watching, Mom, I could use some more. Getting tired of donuts. But today, as I said earlier, these kids, they're text messaging each other on the bus or on their way home from school. They come through the door, hi, yeah. Down the hall, into the room, on the computer, they set down the phone and go back to chatting with the same people that they just finished text messaging that they just spent all day in school with. So my suggestion is sort of a reward system. Come home, do some chores, God forbid, do your homework, and for the things that you do that you're supposed to be doing, you'll earn a certain amount of credit towards computer use. But don't let them store that up. You did all your stuff, you got everything, fine, you can get an hour on the computer now. Kids want to be told, they need to be told, they have to be told where their restrictions are. It goes back to that being a parent and not using this thing as a babysitter. I mean, raising kids takes all of our time, but if you don't want to put that investment into them, then maybe you shouldn't be having them. I don't want to get off onto that. But it is truly obsessive behavior, and it's addictive. And if you don't curtail it, you're asking for a real problem, a real problem. I was asked to come out to Los Angeles to speak to the Vadha Rabbanim there. As intimidating as it is to stand in front of an Aron Kodesh and speaking in front of 50 or 60 Rabbanim is really daunting. And I had to find some way. They wanted to know what can they, as the community leaders, do to try to stem this problem. And I had to find some way of driving the point home to them, to let them know that this is not just a problem out there. So I went online, and I went into MySpace, which we're about to talk about, and I went into AOL and a couple other things, and I started looking for these profiles. And I put in LA, and some typical names like, Devorah, Shoshana, David, Maishi, whatever. And I came up with some profiles. I'm not going to share these with you other than what I've just done, because number one, it has actual names in them. Number two, it has language. I'll try to read part of this, although as in government terms, some of it is redacted. Hey everyone, of course it's shorthand. My name is, and I'm 14. I have brown hair, and I'll get a picture soon. I go to a effed up school. That's all you have to know. I like to party and hang out with my friends, etc., etc., etc. Language is absolutely horrible. Every one of these is worse than the next one. Well, as I was reading through them, I realized that one of the profiles had very specific names in it about who that person was. So I made copies of these, and I blacked out anything that could identify anybody. And with permission, I handed these out to the Rabbanim in the room to look at and read. And after they had a minute to read them and share them with each other and pass them around a little bit, I said, Rabbi Isai, as hard as it was for you to read what you just read, I've got bad news for you. One of you has just read one of your daughter's profile. I'm leaving on the 18th back to LA. the whole community is together now, and they're going to be working very diligently on this problem. But they got the point. There's a thing called MySpace. Some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't. Very quickly, and somebody give me a high sign when I've gone too far. MySpace was developed by a couple of guys who were musicians who wanted to find a way to get people to hear their music because they couldn't get Sony Records to give them a contract. And it became this social networking thing where people could post their music online and other people could hear it and they'd have hopes of getting found. It evolved from that into a way of people meeting each other and talking to each other and sharing information and all that to the tune of 80 million users. For a sexual predator, this is Candyland. It's so popular that Rupert Murdoch just bought the company for millions of dollars. Now you might ask, what does he care about social networking? It's MySpace, it's kids. I mean, what? He does a thing called data mining. He goes through this thing electronically and calls out habits of people and purchasing and what they like and what they don't like and what trends are so that he can make money. The guy's a billionaire many times over. He's not doing a service to society by pumping money into MySpace. He's looking to make money on the deal. Well, I decided, let me see how hard it would be to be a predator and find somebody. So I have a friend that I've known for many years. She lives in Westchester, and she's in a second marriage, and her daughter is from the first marriage. I have no idea even what the first marriage last name was. And they're somewhat removed. It's an occasional kind of a friend of the family kind of thing. But her daughter is like 13, and I said, okay, I wonder if I could find her. I randomly picked her, really. I wonder if I could find her. I knew her first name, basically, and about where they live in Westchester. I started digging around, and within, 5 minutes, I had found this little girl. She had, I don't know how many pictures posted of herself in all sorts of provocative poses. As if that's not bad enough, she had her full name, her date of birth, her home address, what school she goes to, her class schedule, what sports she plays, everything except her social security number. And that could have been in there, I just didn't look that hard. So I called her mother and I said, do me a favor, go online real quick and go to this site. She was horrified. I had no idea. Why didn't you have an idea? Whose daughter is she? When I started to learn how to drive, my father took me on Sunday to the empty shopping center, and we played Dodge the Light Pole. Okay, after I got good at that, he then let me back out of the driveway. I put 900 miles on my father's car, backing it out of the driveway and pulling back in, backing it. After I got a little bit more experience, he took me out on the road and drove with me. After I got a little more experience, he actually let me solo. I got my learner's permit, then I could drive, but I couldn't bring anybody with me. Then I could drive but not at night. Then I could drive with someone but not at night. And as I proved myself more and more, he let me do more and more. He's out in the car waiting for me when we go home. So that's what we do with our kids. We dole out the leash for them. But it seems like for some reason we just don't see the need to do that with the internet. And I can tell you that it's a grave mistake because they are at enormous risk. Now, there are a couple of other things that we need to point out here tonight. I just want to make sure that you know something. If you don't think that there's a problem, when you go home, go online and look up www.thelockers.net. As a locker in school, thelockers.net. This is a site that was set up for frum kids to anonymously be able to vent problems that they're dealing with. I've seen it all, I keep saying, right? I was shocked at some of the stuff that frum kids are bothered about right now. And it's Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky has given his haskama to this, and there's other professionals that monitor it, so it's not just out there. But I will tell you that it is absolutely shocking. Please take a look at that. thelockers.net. So, now that I've sufficiently horrified you, well, let me horrify you one more little thing, and then I'll tie it all together. Bullying. In my day, bullying was the kid out on the playground that ran that corner of the playground, and if you went over there, you got beat up or made fun of or whatever it was. In high school, I got bullied by the junior members of the Ku Klux Klan. They used to stuff their magazine, The Fiery Cross, into my locker, and intimidate me that way, and used to throw stuff on our house and all that. Well, today bullies are online, and they blog. If you know what a blog is, if you don't, it's basically a free-form, ongoing posting that you can type whatever you want into, and other people can add to it. And these kids will pick out one kid to just terrify, and they will bully them to the point where there have been actual documented suicides because of it. If you notice that your child has started to withdraw, they're not socializing as much as they were, they don't want to go to school, or they don't want to go to some function, start looking into it and get them some help right away, because it's a terrible, terrible, insidious problem. Online gambling, it's happening. Be careful with it. Just dealt with a story of a young couple that got married. The two families paid for them to go to live in Eretz Yisrael so that he could sit and learn. 3-4 months into the marriage, they and one of the two families are now bankrupt because he wasn't sitting and learning, he was sitting and gambling online and just drained their bank accounts. If you're interested in learning how to play poker online, don't. It's not free. So now what can we do? Let's tie it up. What can we do to try to stem some of these problems? Number one, I told you, get rid of that profile. Number two, get that computer out of that room. Number three, sit down next to your kid, watch what they're doing. If they've got to do work on the computer, do it with them. Help them do. I always kid with my children. I kid them about how many projects I had to do for elementary school the second time around, and then the third time around, and then the fourth time around, as they through school, because it was always the last second, and I've got to have it tomorrow, I forgot, and then I'm up all night with my wife making projects. At PTA, I always thank the teachers for reminding me how hard it was to make toothpick cities, you know. Now, you'll hear people say that there are filters that you can put on the computer. Filters, that'll solve the problem. Net Nanny or Cyber Sitter, that'll fix the problem. It won't fix the problem. Kids have a den of akhbar. They're little mice. They can get into every nook and cranny. If there's a way around those programs, and there are, they will find it. Okay? So those don't work. You can try them if you want to. One of the things AOL does is it sets the time of use. Okay, well, I'm at work, so you can't use the computer, but until I get home. So from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m., you can't use the computer. But they get home at 3 o'clock. So what do? No problem. You boot the computer, go into the CMOS, change the clock to 7 o'clock tonight, and you're in, because it uses the clock in the computer. They will find their way around it. So there's no real way to proactively stop them from getting in trouble. What I suggest, and what I've brought here, which is sitting up on top, although I apologize, I did a different presentation this morning and I gave away all the brochures. I didn't have time to go back and get more. I suggest putting this software on the computer that is called monitoring software, or a key logger. It's basically a tape recorder. As a matter of fact, we use it at work when we do these cases to keep track of every keystroke that we do so that we can use it in court later on. It absolutely captures every stroke. If you type something and you hit backspace, 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 you'll see that in the report. Backspace, backspace, backspace. It captures everything. Everything in and everything out. Pictures, chats, emails, websites, you name it. That's the first thing it does. You can then go back later and look at it. You have to hit a 900 key combination, secret combination to get into it, and then you have to type in a password. I suggest telling your children that you're putting it on there and getting them with full knowledge that you're doing it. And if they question it, I say something to this effect or something to the effect of Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. Someone's always watching. Someone always knows you're there. There's nothing, you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. I highly suggest you do that. It has a couple of other features. You can actually build a list of known websites that you want to block. So, for instance, fifth grader comes home and says, I got to do a report on the White House. Okay, www.whitehouse.gov, and it's a beautiful internet-based tour of the White House. But whitehouse.com is a porn site. So you can stick that in there right away. Probably its best feature is you can build a word list. And you can put in specific words. And you can assign to various users of that computer that if that word, any one of those words is typed, that it will immediately send you an email, wherever you want it to send you the email, and alert you to the fact that Shoshana has just typed giraffes. I've suggested to the company, and they're working on this for a future edition, that it will do the same thing, but it will actually text message you. So you'll be at work, your phone will say, Shoshana just typed giraffes, and you can pick up the phone and say, hi honey, how's your homework going? Why are you typing giraffes? And they'll be pleasantly surprised that you know exactly what they're up to. Just as a cute little quick anecdote, a similar company that makes this software sent me a beta copy and asked me to test it for them. So I put it on the computer and wanted to test and see how it was running. I installed it when I came home from work one day. I told my girls that I was doing this. That night, before I went to bed, I truly just wanted to see if this thing was working because I had no idea if it would blow up my computer. I didn't know what it was. And sure enough, there was this whole big long thing that my daughter was chatting with all these inappropriate people about inappropriate things. So the next morning, as we were rushing to the bus yet again, I showed her this printout and said, what is this? Now, in Muncie, tuition is extremely expensive, but we sacrificed to give our kids a Jewish education, to give them the 6,000 years of knowledge that we have as the Jewish people. And she looked me in the face and went, when I said, what is this? She went, I don't know. Apparently they didn't teach you how to read, but you knew how to type it. So rather than just say, that's it, you're grounded, no more chatting, because I knew that it would send her underground, we worked out another appropriate means of punishment and reward. And it worked out, thank God, everything has worked out fine for that. So, again, computer in the room, no. Profile, no. Sit down next to them, yes. Learn what they're doing, watch what they're doing. Don't let them use the computer if you're not around. If you're cooking, keep checking on what they're doing. Nobody should have carte blanche. Minimize the amount of time that they're out there searching. And I will, it's late. I appreciate your attention. I'm glad to take some questions. I'll stay here afterwards if anyone wants to talk to me privately. My card is right there. Please take it. If you think you have a problem, you probably do. Call me. I'll give you some direction on what you should do. And again, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for listening.